Hello, everyone. I hope that this didactic video finds you all doing well and learning a lot. I appreciate all of your ministry, all of your learning, and how hard you work. So, congratulations. Tonight's topic is managing anger and expressing it in healthy ways, which can be a very deep or broad topic. And I'm going to try to limit it to just 30 minutes. So, first of all, just want to start with there are four primal emotions that we are born with that is part of our human makeup, our human brain, actually. And those four feelings or emotions are fear, anger, sad, and happy. And those naturally occur with every human on the face of the earth. Um, and there are lots of reasons why we get angry, and there are different levels of anger. And I don't know if you have ever been exposed to this feeling wheel. I don't know if you can see this, but in the middle, as the different feelings are in the center, then it goes out in concentric circles and identifies the feelings for that, all the different levels of feelings for that emotion. And I'd just like to read to you under angry what all those can be. We can feel aggravated, annoyed, critical, disgusted, enraged, envious, fed up, frustrated, furious, hateful, impatient, irate, irritated, mad, mean, outraged, and rage, and resentful, and just an English word meaning sore, out of sorts, sore, S-O-R-E. This was a list all under the emotion of angry. So you can see it goes from a more mild level of anger all the way to furious and outraged into a full-blown rage. But many times we don't stop and identify that anger can be underneath when we're feeling impatient or when we're feeling frustrated or irritated or annoyed. So, just wanted to start with that to help make you aware and get you thinking about your own emotions. Also, everything I do for didactics needs to be contextualized. And I think the last didactic in January was about passive aggressive behavior. What causes it? What are the traits of passive aggressive? And so I'll mention that during the didactic tonight. But you might want to go back and refer to your notes on that or look at the didactic again because passive aggressive behavior, personality trait, is learned, but it also has some innate characteristics of personality type. It can also come from past experiences. So, a lot of our emotions, especially the primal ones like anger, fear, uh, sad and happy usually are an inner expression of what's going on inside of us, and it comes out. I remember in the Filipino culture that you want smooth relationships. And so you, as trainees, are learning in some ways as a pastoral caregiver, a chaplain, industrial chaplain, whatever that might be, you're learning new ways to function and communicate and have better relationships than maybe what you grew up in. And that's definitely how culture is. You take the foundation and then you add to it along the way. So, anyway, the Bible tells us in Ephesians to sin, I'm sorry, let me start over again. To be angry, but sin not. And when I was younger, I used to think, well, first of all, growing up in Southern Baptist in the southeast part of the United States, um, it was wrong to be angry at somebody. And it wasn't until I was in my 20s and went into seminary that I learned that it was okay to be angry, but not to let the anger control me or be absorbed by it or act it out in wrong, unhealthy ways. And that's what it means when Paul says it's okay to be angry, but do not sin in your anger. So don't hurt others physically, mentally, verbally, emotionally, or especially physically too, doing harm to others. So it's what we do with the anger inside of us. It's how we can creatively express it in positive ways, but being true to what we're feeling, but also finding ways to express and messages to people. And so it's what we do, how we respond in different situations, different people, different relationships are unique, and therefore learning and practicing how to express and manage anger is an ongoing, in some ways, an ongoing journey. And so we're going to start into the didactic because we want to have well-being, and we want to have good, healthy relationships. And so to understand anger more, we often need to recognize the triggers, the things that cause us to feel frustrated, annoyed, irritated. And so pay attention, learn to pay attention to people, to situations that you're in, or also thoughts. Our thoughts lead to feelings, and our feelings often lead to behavior, outward behavior. And so if we know what can spark some frustration, anger, impatience, then right there, that's step one to try to get ahead of the triggers if possible. And a lot of times to identify patterns, our lives are, as we interact with life, events, circumstances, people, family, friends, coworkers. We are always negotiating relationships. We're always interacting, either reacting or responding. And so it takes some thought, some discipline, and sometimes if you happen to be an introverted person, you may want to keep a journal of your feelings and what's happening when you start feeling that way. And then eventually you will see patterns that get ignited by triggers, and you identify the triggers and the patterns, and then you can start to manage your anger. And we have done a lot with mental health didactics, and so you can go back and look at your notes and see how even different mental health disorders are challenging to handle anger. But I'm not going to go into that tonight. Identify the physical signs of anger so we can feel and recognize in our bodies some physical signs, just like with anxiety disorder. We can have a fast heartbeat, heart rate. We can feel ourselves get tense or rapid breathing. And that is more recognizable when our anger level has gotten to start building and building, or we're in a very intense situation or relationship. And then you might feel or recognize those kind of physical symptoms or signs. So triggers, pay attention to a person's physical signs. If you're a chaplain or counseling someone, you can notice their body language. But for us as chaplains, as ministers, we have to work on ourselves first and learn all of these techniques and awareness so that we can grow and personally develop so we can help others. Diba? So, some healthy management techniques. Take a time out. If you're at work, you may not be able to do that if you're in the middle of a intense conversation. But when you start to feel the anger escalating, step away from the situation and get your control back, get your composure back, and or at home, or parenting. I know I wish I had done that more, parenting our boys, Ben and Chris, because I would get emotionally hooked. They were both very verbal and expressive, and so I would get triggered and emotionally hooked. And I later learned that it's just best to tell them, mommy needs a timeout right now, and I'll be right back. And so getting some distance, some disengagement when you feel anger escalating. And then give yourself time to calm down before communicating, before responding if it needs a response. So you are collecting your thoughts, your feelings, you're becoming very self-aware and gaining your balance again. So timeouts are very useful. We have talked about relaxation techniques, and once again, this just takes the awareness, and then right to an action. Okay, I need to calm down, I need to relax. So you probably know these by now. Deep breathing exercises where you inhale to a count of 4 or 5, and then you hold the breath for a count of 3 to 5, and then you exhale for a count of 4. And that slows down the heart rate and the breathing rate. So, deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. You start, now this is hard to do. When I'm angry, I, on the Myers Briggs, am an F, very feeling. I take in all of my world through feelings. So I don't do this one very well, to be honest. But it is, you start, when you're so tense, you start with your feet, and your brain, your mind thinks about each muscle group: your feet, your lower legs, your upper legs, your torso, your hands, your arms, your shoulders, and you get finally to your head. And you're trying to, through mental intentionality, you're trying to say to those muscles while you're breathing, relax, relax. And it works if you can think to do that. I mean, it really does. That's how connected our bodies are, and how powerful and wonderfully made our brain is, to be able to think of that muscle and then try to know to relax it through the nervous system. So, relaxation techniques: deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, and then, of course, mindfulness and meditation. Getting your whole being away from the anger feelings, and trying to focus on the present moment of calm and self-talk, and just praying, and or reading scripture. A verse, a memory verse that comes to mind is always very helpful. And just meditating on God in the present moment. So those are some relaxation techniques. And then we've talked about this before, cognitive restructuring. So it is possible to reframe our thoughts. And again, this is very intentional, and it takes some practice doing it. We don't always automatically do it. And so challenge our negative, our irrational thoughts that often fuel our anger. We will replay a situation that was hurtful, or that we were offended, or that was unfair, or a betrayal, or someone gossiped about us, a person. And so if we replay that and think about that a lot, that anger is just gonna just keep building, and it will be controlling eventually. You'll be self-absorbed with the anger itself. And so you reframe and restructure by thinking of more positive and realistic thoughts, especially if you can identify that the thought patterns were irrational. And except for pretty severe mental health disorders, where irrational thoughts are part of the brain chemistry, it is possible to restructure, but it takes practice and awareness. And if keeping a journal or a log really reinforces that. So you look at it and you see, this week I had irrational thoughts this many times. And challenge yourself to grow, and especially to grow in maturity in Christ, so that Christ is in control and rules and reigns. And I'm not saying it's easy, but these are some techniques that we can do. Problem solving, and this is easier and sometimes said than actually doing it. But if a specific situation or circumstance is causing anger, then we can use the logical part of our brain, the cognitive part, to analyze and think of solutions, to find constructive solutions to help change whatever it is going on. And it gives a power and control over anger to say, oh, this might help. This is one solution I could try when I'm starting to get triggered. So, problem solving. And the other one is to communicate your concerns assertively. And assertively means to express yourself in respectful ways and to get outward communication to a person or persons, of how things are bothering you, how they're affecting you, and asking for help. If it's at work, if it's at church, which is hard to do, but it's the more we can get out and communicate in honesty what is bothering us using I messages, the better we will be at problem solving. And then, of course, anytime we do physical exercise, we start our endorphins, our good hormones, and it just breaks the stress momentarily until we can get balance again. So, running, walking, anything you want to do for exercise, it helps to release pent up tension and reduce stress. So, therefore, lowering any anger, frustration, agitation. So, I'm going to give you a few examples of healthy expressions of anger. One would be assertive communication, and I just mentioned that, to express our feelings in clear, respectful, and not blaming or non-aggressive manner, non-aggressive ways of communicating, and always use I messages, statements to communicate needs and feelings. So, for example, I feel frustrated when blank, whatever the person or people are doing, you're saying, these are my feelings. I feel frustrated when, and you identify a form of communication that is making you angry, a behavior, a decision that was made that was unfair and unjust. And so you're expressing your feelings in a respectful way. And if we don't express our feelings of anger, frustration, whatever level it is, then it will cause some resentment. It just keeps down, pushed down. It can cause resentment attitude. It can cause even long term. If you feel angry and it's turned inward, it can cause actual depression and anxiety. So it's better not to suppress, but to express anger in a healthy way. Another result of not expressing anger, we learned with the passive aggressive personality trait. And because what happens? We become very passive, draw back, not talk, not conflict, resolve conflict, problem solving. There's no opportunity for that when a person is consistently passive aggressive. And that is a form of power, control. Um, they can be angry if a person is passive aggressive in their communication or their behavior, but they're not expressing it in a healthy way. So, talking to a trusted friend, a family member, or therapist, counselor can be helpful to understand how to express feelings and to get feedback on that assertiveness or in the cultural dynamics of communication and relationships. And then the third way of a healthy expression of anger is to set boundaries. And I think that maybe you've talked about that in your IPR groups or other sessions, but learn to say no to things that you do not want to do. Um, there is power in saying no. And I don't know for sure, but it seems like I remember that it's hard for Filipinos to say no when they're asked to do something or to take on something, some responsibility, but they want to have the smooth relationship and no conflict. So they keep on saying yes. But we've all got limits, human limits, and boundary setting in relationships is very, very important. And again, I can't say enough about how it takes practice and practice and practice. Um, I've been trying to practice since I was aware of what boundaries were in relationships and in for well-being, for my own well-being. And so don't give up, keep practicing and figure out how to do it in your culture in a loving and respectful way to say no. And once again, part of that saying no is being honest and using iMessages and saying, I would like to do this for you, but right now I feel too overloaded with responsibilities. So that's one way you can say no. And we tell people our feeling about whatever it is that they're wanting us to do or take on. And then to like with a lot of anxiety disorder, PTSD, other mental health issues, is trying to avoid situations or people that trigger anger in us. So, thinking about different relationship dynamics or situations that you're in. And if you feel like you're vulnerable, like you're overtired, you're stressed, you're um, been through a crisis, that's when we're most vulnerable. And so it's very wise to try to avoid those things that causes a trigger, at least for a certain amount of time, just till you can get strength and balance back in your spirit, in your personality. So when do we need to seek professional help? If anger is frequent, ongoing, if it's intense, if it's causing problems in relationships or work, then a person needs professional help before it goes too far. And then we might not, as persons, we may not have a mental health disorder or issue, but we find it difficult to control our anger. And there are many causes for that, even for children not being able to. But um, maybe professional help is needed, a school counselor for students, or a pastor, or a chaplain in a hospital, or a psychologist that does private practice. But just going and getting some help with learning to control anger. And then last, if the anger has come to a level or point that a person wants to harm themselves or others, professional help is needed immediately. And that happens far too much in cultures and society, really. And so be aware of that. If the person you're working with, or yourself, if things get so out of control for so long and thoughts of harming self or others starts to creep in, then it's time for professional help. So that's what I'm going to leave you with tonight. As I said earlier, we could talk different sections on this topic, but anger is natural, a normal emotion, primal, we call it. We're born with the ability to feel angry or fearful or sad or happy. And so as we grow from babies to adults, we are going to experience anger. And a lot of times when we're in relationship with people, interpersonal relationships, we're going to disagree. We're going to have disagreements or conflict of interest or misunderstandings, miscommunication, unrealistic expectations. And so we need to learn how to navigate that and even to renegotiate relationships, different times of life. And as we as ministers, chaplains grow personally, spiritually, professionally, we might need to renegotiate some relationships and with expectations. And the better, it's better if we, in any relationship, marriage, parenting, colleagues, church mates, church staff, if the communication is always honest and always out there, so that we're not trying to mind read or guess, but we are on level playing ground, so to speak. And so much relationships have to do with expectations that we have in the relationship with others, and needs, expectations and needs that um, have to be met, or need to be met. And so just keep that in mind as you think about levels of anger, and don't let it turn into sin, but find creative ways to express anger and hurt. So, with that, I will leave you until next time. God bless you all. Bye bye.